Welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk from the Bon Secours Wellness Arena, Greenville, South Carolina. Michigan State, tough result today. Exciting game. You guys all saw it. Michigan State falls to Duke University 85-76, second round of the NCAA Tournament West Regional. Michigan State made a nice comeback against the number 2 seed, had a chance to really write another chapter in the amazing Tom Izzo and Michigan State University basketball history in the NCAA Tournament. For a second-round game, it didn't feel like a second-round game. With Mike Krzyzewski retiring and potentially being his last game, it was a carnival atmosphere here today, and Michigan State showed up and shot well, had a 5-point lead, 5 minutes to go. Then Duke hit the gas pedal, played really well down the stretch. Michigan State couldn't pull it out. Disappointing outcome for Michigan State. Played really well, though, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember.
In some ways.
I can't remember a second-round game this exciting. Maybe since Michigan State played Pittsburgh in that, that second-round game out in Denver, and that was intense, and that was great, and every possession mattered, kind of like this one. But this really felt like a Sweet 16 game, like an Elite 8 game. What you'd expect for with 2 of the top teams in the country battling, and I think it showed up well on TV as well. Mike Krzyzewski was in tears afterwards talking about how hard his players played, and I give those guys credit because what they did at the end with guys hitting some really tough shots. That 1-3 that went in, I think it was a Roach. Yeah. I mean,
shot clock was going down. Michigan State had played good defense in that possession,
right, and it was a high arcing shot, and it went in. And there was several times throughout this game where both teams made shots like that. The difference is that Michigan State made a couple mistakes down the stretch. Duke made tough shots that we haven't seen them make a whole lot, and they're advancing. Meanwhile, I think if you're Michigan State, you can feel a lot better about this game than you did losing to UCLA.
Oh yeah.
Last year that was a bitter loss, and Izzo said a couple times I like where the program's at, or words to that effect, and I think what he means by that is he knows that he's got his guards for the future. And you look at what Michigan State does when they have good guards. And both point guards played well today, and those guys have really developed over the course of the season in terms of complementing each other. And then you got some growing up to do with Max Christie and Jaden Akins, but those guys both showed Akins today, some high level rebounds where he just jumped out of the gym. And looked like leaped higher than Charlie Bell would. But and he also had that big 3, and I can see Izzo envisioning what Christie and Akins will look like next year, when in comparison to what the talent that Duke has right now. And I think Izzo really likes what he's got at the guard position moving forward.
Yeah, the thing that I come away with is that this is a Michigan State team that began improving, like a last stage of improvement. I go back to the Ohio State game, even though they lost by double digits or whatever. Defense started to come around there. Then we saw them play well in the Big Ten tournament and face a real tough task here 2 nights ago against Davidson. Big win that night. This game, number 2 seed Duke. Duke played well. Duke has not been playing well of recent weeks, but they showed up and they played pretty well today. And Michigan State played well too, and that's what I'm getting at, is that this team that's been under construction, they've been trying to 1 step forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, all the way into 30 games, get your crap together and all those things. Come out today, Gabe Brown, maybe his best game of the season. Marcus Bingham hits 2 3-pointers, played some good defense around the rim and on the perimeter. Got a key steal that led to a run out and a dunk. You have Bingham and Brown playing really well. Hauser, was 1 out of 4 from 3-point range, a little bit below the percentage that he's been shooting over the last 10 or 11 games, but we know Hauser's been playing well. He had a big steal that led to a run-out dunk. So these seniors that Michigan State fans and Tom Izzo have just been waiting and just wringing their hands, waiting for these guys to come together. They come together and they lose, but in some ways you're playing, in some ways your best basketball at the end, but the season's over. You know what I mean, Paul? They've been waiting all year for a lot of this to come together. Tyson Walker played well. Hogarth delivered some things, made some mistakes, but played some pretty good defense along the way. The team is getting better, and it's hard to accept it that the team was playing better, and I don't want to say peaking, but headed in the right direction, and making that run, and up by 5 minutes to go, up by 3. Up 3 minutes to go. Michigan State played some really good basketball, spirited basketball. Tyson Walker, big 3-pointer. Gabe Brown, 4 3-pointers in the first half. Had a big one down the stretch there. And, 3-point lead, 3 minutes to go. Had to play some excellent basketball to come back from a 9-point deficit. Like I said, some of the best basketball of the year. Usually when an ISO team's doing that, we're talking about moving on to the Sweet 16.
Right.
That's what's hard for me to process. Like we were at, I think, Winston-Salem when Michigan State played a very good, Lawson and Hansborough, I think, was on that team, North Carolina team in 07 when Neitzel was a junior. Michigan State beat Marquette. And then got beat in the second round by a high seed. It happens. It's like a few years ago when they beat Miami Hurricanes in the first round, got beat by a number 2 seed Kansas by 20 in the second round. You're out. You're supposed to be out. You lose to a 2 seed. In this case, had a real nice win, and you're playing a 2 seed, had them on the ropes. It's not like those games when they lost handily and were the inferior team. I'm not sure they are the inferior team. Duke is better, but Michigan State, man, I'm having trouble processing it, Paul.
Yeah, it's interesting because you look at what happened after, you look at what happened after Michigan State lost to Kansas. That was 3 straight Big Ten championships. And I'm not saying that Michigan State is going to be that team, but I can see more pieces, like the guard pieces. The one thing that was kind of frustrating this year is the inexperience level at the wings and guards. And, when is Gabe Brown going to take over? Well, he did today. And when are those point guards? I mean, those guys coming together is one. I think one of the reasons why we talk about the consistency towards down the stretch. Tyson Walker has shown some ability to be a scorer, but I think what we've seen from him lately is he's doing some nice things as a facilitator as well, and also learning how to balance when he's doing a much better job of knowing when to probe and go for that mid-range jumper or attack the rack, and when to kind of drive to kick. And those are all growth things. And then
that's what I'm bothered by. We're a lot of times in the mid-season we talk about, well, they lost today, but they got better here, which is going to help them later. Today they got better in some areas, which is going to help them. Never. I mean, you're talking about next year, possibly.
Maybe not. But you look at okay. I was just listening to Miami press conference after the Auburn game. The 2 guys that they have up on the dais with Coach Larinaga are guys that are 6-year seniors. And, one of the things that Tom Izzo said afterwards is one of the things that this game showed him is that they need to get stronger. And, you said ahead of time that Wendell Moore and Roach, those guys are strong dudes, and they could do some things on the drive, and they did that today. You look at A.J. Hoggard. He's the only guy that on Michigan State's team that I would say is comparable strength-wise to either of the guys in the Duke. He might be stronger, but we've seen what Michigan State could do given his strength and to go along with his other skill set. Now you're looking at 2 guys like Jaden Akins and Max Christie. I think Max Christie, even though he had a late turnover that marred his entire performance today, and that was a frustrating thing. But a couple of the things he did today were pretty impressive to me. He went up and got 2 hard offensive rebounds, and then he had that baseline dunk. That was a Max Christie that if you do a little bit of calculating, give that kid 10 pounds in the off season. Get him stronger to the point where you can put him in ball screen situations and that type of thing. Get Jaden Akins, who I remember doing that article on him before he came in from Sunrise Christian. The one thing the Sunrise Christian coach told me, the one thing we really, really, wish that we would have had with Jaden Akins and the rest of our guys is a real year in the weight room, because it was the COVID year. Jaden Akins is $175. He's never really lifted weights until this past summer the way he needs to. That kid can jump out of the gym. You add strength to that, and then he's a problem. You add strength to Tyson Walker, who comes from a mid-major program. He's really never lifted weights and gotten strong. Now he knows what's expected of him at this level. So that strength piece can really, and we've seen that throughout the season when they play teams that have physically mature guards, even on teams that are kind of inferior teams, but they have physically mature wings. It showed up and it's hurt Michigan State. Sometimes Maryland, I think of Eric Ayala, some of the Penn State guys, some of the Ohio State dudes. Michigan State will have that next year with a year in the weight room, and I think it'll benefit them.
But they won't have Bingham and Hauser.
They won't.
Who've been good in the last 10 days.
I agree.
I liked Bingham today, man.
I really did too.
And there's a couple times when Banchero tried to go to work on him, and Bingham, unlike some 7-footers in the Big Ten who can't come more than 12 feet away from the rim, that's what I think is so valuable about Bingham. I know he had some problems this year, and Izzo was trying to get him to do this right and do that right. But at 7 feet, being able to go out 18 feet from the basket and have the lateral quickness to play ball screen defense, or in this case today, they would switch Duke would run that 4 or 5 ball screen, so 5 would switch on to Banchero. Usually when Banchero gets a center on him, he's taking him to the rim. Bingham switches onto him. I'm not saying Bingham can cover him for 40 minutes, but right here, right now, stayed with him, lateral movement, discouraged the shot, and Banchero's giving the ball up.
Right.
And I don't know much. To me, I see scouts scouts get paid a lot of money to scout, and they know what they're doing or whatever, but I see them making mistakes in both sports all the time. And I don't know what Bingham's going to become, but 7 feet, being able to move his feet against a guy like that in the perimeter, there's not a lot of guys on planet Earth that can do that. And even if you only need to do it for 8 or 9 minutes per game in the professional level, he has things that some of those big guys in the Big Ten that won't be in the NBA. He can do some things on defense, and that's what I always liked about Bingham long-term earlier in the season, because he helped them have good defense in November and December. It's just too bad that he won't be part of it next year. Apparently sounds like he's all set on moving on, and that's good for him and everything. But, man, I mean, he had some good moments today, Paul.
Right, and if you're Tom Izzo, you'd love to have that guy back. The version that they got of him, like for the first 10, 15 games of the season, and the version that they had of him for the last 5 or 6 games of the season. It's like that's kind of the frustrating thing. The guy that you'd also like to have it back is the Gabe Brown that you saw tonight.
Yeah.
And I still think that for a guy like Gabe Brown, I know that he frustrates a lot of people because you see him do it in bursts. Like when he's really dialed in, and you're just like, if that was like a Denzel Valentine or a Gary Harris, I think back to the Gary Harris game against Memphis when he was that his true freshman year. I believe it was, but he had like 30 points in that game, and it just like once you hit a couple of those, you expect guys to kind of want that all the time. Run stuff for me. And with Gabe, it seems like he gets to that. He'll score 12 quick points or 8 quick points, and then he'll just fade and whatnot. I think he could. Both those guys would be great coming back another year. I can see why they wouldn't want to, or what more can they accomplish? I think with Bingham, I'm with you. And NBA scouts have been talking to his high school coach and stuff like that, going all the way back into the summer. So I mean, they know who he is, but it's probably going to be a deal where he has to get there through the G League.
Sure, and he's
but he's still young. I mean, when you think of it, he's not. I don't think he's 22 yet. So there's a lot of big guys like Hunter Dickinson at Michigan, who's older than Marcus Bingham. So
and a sophomore, yeah. So and then Malik Hall again. Gave an effort. Tried, but just not a lot there. Missed a medium range shot. Julius Marble missed some medium range shots in the first half.
Well, I think the worst thing with Malik Hall is he failed to contest 2 3-pointers by Banchero.
Well, now on those, I was watching Izzo, and that was like a scouting report thing. That's the way they wanted it. They wanted to shrink in here, take away the drive, and react back out to him. Now Banchero,
I didn't feel like he was going to drive all day. I really didn't feel like he was going to. I mean, there's times where he was matched up on Joey Hauser, and he didn't want to drive, and that really took me by surprise.
If you chest him, then maybe he does drive, though. Yeah. That's what they didn't want to get into, because Banchero is a good passer. We saw that a couple of times. So that's the way Michigan State had game planned it. They wanted to take away the drive here and react out. He's a 40% three-point shooter, but they were going to live with that poison today. Let him see if he can make the first couple. Not.
Hope it was North Carolina.
Yeah, they weren't going to just Hogarth him and let him shoot. They were going to close out, but they weren't going to chest him all over the place.
I didn't feel like those were good enough closeouts, even in that regard. I mean, and I feel like the attention to detail with him, I just feel like
with Banchero?
No, with Malik Hall in general. I don't feel like that. Some guys had that switch turned on today, like some veterans in Marcus Bingham. I just have not seen that switch that you expect from veteran players, especially a guy like Hall, who has shown what he can do in several games this year. Like Kenny Goins or someone like that he would be all over that and deliver the energy. I don't know what's going on with Malik Hall, but the energy from him is not what I'd expect it to be from a veteran.
And, in the Michigan State program, it takes a while for guys to get programmed, whether it's a freshman or a grad transfer. I mean, there's people on the message board saying, well, they need to go in the portal and get a big. Yeah, there's not many bigs out there. I mean, UCLA went into the portal and they got a big from Rutgers, and he's kind of been a stiff.
Theo Pinson?
Right. There's not a lot out there. I mean, Duke went in the portal and got a 7th man, Theo John. He scored a reverse layup tonight. He averaged 5 points a game at Marquette, averaging about 4 points a game at Duke. There's some players out there, but I know that Auburn went in the portal and got Kessler, but I think he was originally from Georgia, so he was kind of coming back home. But even if if you're lucky enough to go get a real good one, then you've got to program them. I mean, Tyson Walker, it took him a while, and he's a good, amiable kid who's willing to listen in those things. But you bring in the wrong type of guy, the way Izzo demands and so forth, there's no magic wands to bring in a portal guy and have him come in and boom, he's going to be better than Marcus Bingham. That's not going to happen.
Right.
or Joey Hauser. I mean, I know Hauser struggled earlier in the year, came on strong the last 10 or 11 games, settled in nicely, became a reliable three-point shooter, and really carried them in that big win against Davidson. It took a lot of years for him to get that. And a lot of people that talk about Michigan State back in December, they're all wondering, why is Hauser playing so many minutes? Why is Hall not playing more minutes? And now it's reversed. That's the way seasons go. But if you go out and get unknown, undefeated, faceless, nameless guy in the portal, that might be a Band-Aid at some programs, but what Michigan State tries to do to win, which is a proven system to do it, you have to do it Michigan State's way. It's hard to just plug and play an upper-class big man,
especially like ball screen defense and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's a different story if you use Shaq ball screens and you don't demand as much as Michigan State does on ball screens. I know people are going to be like, you're an idiot for saying this, but I think you'd be more likely to get growth out of Mady Sissoko.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
And he showed me some stuff down the stretch where there were some key energy things, and I think that's one of the things that the program needs is they need an energy guy, like a rebounding first guy, like a garbage man around the rim type guy. You got to get something to complement Julius Marble. I think Julius Marble will take a step in the right direction. Every year he's gotten just a little bit better, and maybe next year, he'll be the guy shooting threes because he's got a good looking shot. Today, I think he was over. He's done well against Duke in the past. Today, I think he was overmatched.
Yeah, his back to the basket was really going to be a struggle for him against Williams down there. He tried a couple, and they were off balance and awkward, didn't make those. But a couple of those face-ups might have been affected by those earlier. I don't know. And then, Sissoko, he's got to learn the plays. I mean, it's 2 straight years he comes to the court, and he doesn't know where the play is a lot of times. And he's given effort, but it's just not in the right place.
But you can't tell me that if you bring in some dude from a Podunk U or whatever, and no disrespect to mid-majors, and everyone's got a different system, but you can't tell me just because you saw a guy on TV, they got 20 rebounds or 15 rebounds in a game, that he's going to do that at Michigan State. Even if you brought in that dude, let's say that, I know people were talking about the guy from Penn State, the guy that plays a ton of minutes this past year. John Hara, he would not fit at Michigan State. There's some guys that just wouldn't, within the ball screen system. I don't see.
Yeah,
there's a limited number of guys that can do it.
Yeah, plug and play is not. It's not like golf team guy. We're just put in there, let him play his game. He's got to fit. And he's got to do some things. And I know Kessler had a great year, and Auburn peaked 5 weeks ago, but they just got blown out by Miami, and they're done. I mean, they're number 1 in the country, first time in program history, and they're all excited about it. They could have that Jabari Smith might be the number 1 player taken. They won 1 game, done. So they had Kessler, and they had the number 1. They went out and got the Elephant Hunter guy, and they've got a good coach in a lot of ways. But on offense, man, they just kind of jack up shots.
I don't know. I don't see how some of those styles of play.
Remember when everybody loved Alabama 365 days ago?
Yeah, that style of play
or
does
in December.
If you have no fundamentals and you could just shoot without any kind of structure, that shows this time of year. You might make a run here or there, and you might to the Final Four once in a while, but more often than not, that's good enough to lose games. You've got to play fundamentally sound basketball, and I liked a lot of what Michigan State has done, and the way guys have grown, over the course of the year. When you think back of a lot of guys, and everyone's like, well, these guys have a little bit of experience. I was just writing a little bit ago about Max Christie and Jaden Akins. Marcus Bingham and Gabe Brown played on a Final Four team as a freshman, but they didn't get real experience that year. And,
Gabe Brown had that game against LSU.
But he had a game against LSU, but I mean, in terms of getting real minutes in a regular role,
about 10 minutes a game.
It's different. Jaden Akins, 14, 15 minutes a game, sometimes 20. Playing a real role coming off the bench. Max Christie leading the team in minutes. Yeah, he had a rough freshman year, and some of which I think will be solved by strength and conditioning and whatnot, and just being, I expect him to take a jump like a lot of guys. You think of that 2006 team, the Miles Bridges freshman year team. A lot of people wanted to give up on Cassius Winston that year. Mm-hmm.
He had a ways to go defensively.
Yeah, he did, and you take a big jump. Kalen Lucas after his freshman year, he took a big jump as a sophomore and player of the year in the Big Ten. I mean, I'm not saying that Christie's going to be that guy per se, but I think there's a lot of room for improvement. Both of those guys will take big jumps, and I think Pierre Brooks, if he gets his body taken care of, he's got a chance to take a big jump as well.
Yeah, and Brooks can play a 3 or a 4. what is Brooks, about 6'5"? He shoots it pretty well. We talked about Grandison and how Illinois missed Grandison this year. Different shape guys, but they could both play like a perimeter shooting stretch 4 when you go small. Now, Illinois went small a lot this year, but if and when Michigan State wants to go small in the future, Brooks might give them some versatility there. That's what Izzo's thinking a little bit. A.J. Hogard, I've been talking about that for 2 or 3 weeks. There is some strain there that needs to get ironed out and wrinkled out, and he and Izzo have to get on the same page for everything going forward. But he turned in some nice plays today. That block shot he had on Williams earlier in the game was kind of amazing. And that floating runner that he hit with about 4 minutes to go, big-time shot. Problem is, after he made that, he went in and got a shot blocked. And that's what Izzo, knowing when to, restrain yourself and not attempt a poor shot. In the first half or somewhere midway through the game, he was open, plenty of time on the shot clock, and he missed a 17-footer. Izzo did not like that. Izzo needs his point guard to think the way he does, which is a scary thing. Yeah. And if you don't, Izzo has problems with that. So he made progress in that direction. There's some strain that needs to get ironed out there for Hogard to come back and build off of this, because he's certainly improving at a rapid clip. I watched Izzo from where my seat was. I could see Izzo like pretty much the whole game. And, through parts of the game, you'd see him, kind of do this to guys. If you go to Michigan State games at Breslin, you might see him do that. That means shrink into the gaps, pack line defense, play the drive. And he kept doing it, he kept getting, not being satisfied with it. Got on Christie once or twice, got on Akins once or twice. Like, when you'd see Duke counter break and just take it right to the rack and score those layups right to the rim. Scouting report, that was never supposed to turn out that way, and Izzo thought he had it communicated to them. But when Izzo said we didn't always stick to our game plan, that's part of what he's talking about. And if he goes back and watches the film, he'll see 6 or 7 field goals that where Duke was doing exactly what Michigan State was trying to prevent and felt like they could have prevented, to give up some other poison rather than that poison.
That's why he brought up the I word, inexperience with his younger players. I think sometimes, and we've seen this like against really good teams, that national championship game against North Carolina. Michigan State was playing so well coming into that, and all of a sudden they did a lot of uncharacteristic things on defense in that game. This moment was really big. In some ways, Michigan State really rose to it, but at times they did make mistakes that are kind of inexcusable. Those are things that have to be learned from. And I think the fact that, like Izzo made a point to mention this, is a lot of times it was the young players making those mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And so Hogard had that one shot blocked. The very next possession, timeout, they come out, they try to run something. Ball ends up in Hauser's hands, and he backs down Banchero and had the shot blocked. And then at the next stoppage, Izzo was talking to Hauser, and you could just tell by the body language that Izzo was telling Hauser, that's not what I had in mind. While he was doing it, I'm like, man, they went straight, they just cleared out and posted him up, and it didn't work. But you could tell that's not what they wanted to do.
He wanted him to pass that ball.
Yeah. So with 3 minutes to go in a key situation. Hauser has done real well, but that was an expensive possession that they lost that one. Next trip down, Max Christie with the interception. And on that interception, Duke's always been known for that pressure half-court defense, which sometimes gives Michigan State trouble. They didn't do a lot of that today, but they turned it on that possession. And they got an interception similar to when Michigan State turned on that half-court pressure late in the Davidson game and got a couple of shot clock violations. That old Duke defense showed up there, and Max Christie threw it away, trying to reverse the ball back to the backcourt to Gabe Brown. And that was a Krzyzewski move right there with some guys that could carry it out, like Izzo said, big guys on the perimeter, bigger than Krzyzewski usually has, and they made the plays down the stretch. I agree with what Izzo said. He thought that when it was close, down 2 with 10 minutes to go, up 5 with 5 minutes to go, he expected Duke to get a little shaky and the pressure to go on them, and for them to revert to the stage fright Brook Trout look errors and mistakes that they made when they just went off a cliff against North Carolina, the last game at Cameron Indoor, and the ACC championship game losing by 20 to Virginia Tech. He's kind of put it in their court. Let's see if they can handle it, and they handled it. Like Izzo said.
That was my entire premise. Leading up to this game, if it's close, Michigan State's going to win because of that, and you could see it, you could feel it, that momentum turn. The Auburn fans were on Michigan State's side for that, and it was loud in here, and it wasn't pro Duke. Duke fans reasserted themselves after some of those mistakes that Michigan State made that allowed them to get back into it, or the big 3-pointer. But it was very, very. This is a very, very high level game, and
it was a great experience.
It was, and it was but we've been to a lot of these games. This is one of the best games that I've seen, covering cover Michigan State
Yeah.
in some ways.
And, you think like 1998 when they beat Eastern Michigan and beat Princeton and made the Sweet 16 the first time in Izzo's career. Then they go and they play, North Carolina with Antoine Jamison, and those guys down in Greensboro and played well. But you're like, okay, we lost, but we got everybody coming back. I'm beating a dead horse this time. Don't everybody coming back, and there was a lot to build on. It was heading in the right direction.
But I still firmly believe, and I agree with you 100% about Bingham and whatnot. But I'm just saying, like Michigan State's best teams under Izzo, when he has experienced guards and has good point guard play, I mean, they can get some stuff done with. I'm not going to say below average. They can get some stuff done with non-All-American style big men. Mm-hmm. I mean, it just seems like guard play this year, this time of year is so important. But like when you go back to where Michigan State was at the beginning of the year and how inexperienced they were at the wings, even with Gabe Brown, because he wasn't experienced in the role he was in, and then the 2 point guards, they were better than what Michigan State had last year at point guard, but that was a really low bar. This time of year, they're playing good. Now, if both those guys come back, and I think they will if both of those dudes, if they take the off-season coaching and really take to heart what Izzo wants them to do in the off-season, I just think that when you have the guard situation taken care of, it's easier to work out the big man situation. I'll even go back to 2009. Who were the starting power forwards, or who were the big men for Michigan State in that game?
In the national championship game? I can't remember who were they.
Was it Derek Nix and Garrett
Draymond
Sherman?
Green was coming off the bench and playing about 25 minutes. Derek Nix was starting but only playing like 10
minutes. Was Draymond
minutes.
still in the program at that point?
In 2009? Yeah, he was a freshman.
But I'm talking about like the centers, like Nix
would start but only play like 10 minutes.
Right.
He'd begin the game, then sit the rest of the half. Then he'd begin the second half and sit the rest of the half. By the end of the year, that's what they're doing. Draymond was getting more of those minutes.
But I mean, what I'm saying is still, I mean, it's still valid. I mean, it was more of a project with their big men, and I mean, it's not ideal. You'd love to have Marcus Bingham back. You'd love to have this version of Marcus Bingham back with experienced guards. That'd be great. Mm-hmm. But I think they're going to be ahead of where they were coming into this season because of the experience at guards.
Miami Hurricanes not in the same bracket as Michigan State, but they had guys come back for that 6th year. And look where they're going. Michigan State, these guys are all planning to go. And I don't know if Izzo wants them all back. I'm not sure. But if they did stay, which I don't think is the plan for anybody.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. But that's kind of what I would kind of like to see, Paul. For me, just to watch this team continue, because there's something there. It gets a little crowded, and there's been some strain in some other areas too. And I think Izzo wants to move on from some other areas. Because at some point as a coach, you get tired of beating the same horse all the time. But I'm sure Larinaga was beating horses, with those guys, and he's a great coach and came to fruition with those guys. They're in the Sweet 16. Now, I was going to say something else about something, but I can't remember what it was. I thought it was a pretty good point too, but I can't remember what it was. I'd really like to get to it also, but so we might as well just sign off here since I can't think of it. You got anything else, Paul?
No, I don't.
I was hoping I'd remember. But anyway, all right, we're going to wrap it up. We got spring football coming up, coverage of that here for the rest of March and into April. And, I'll just let it go. Paul Konyndyk, Jim Comparoni, VCast, SpartanMag.com, Greenville, South Carolina. We'll see you next time. Thanks.